Exactly. And what I want to explain to people is why gold. And at a basic, the reason they need gold is gold can be refined to such levels that it can be powdered into the atmosphere and still be reflective enough to burn off gold. So, or I'm sorry, to absorb the sun's energy and to also reflect it out. And gold is a cleaner metal than most of the other metals that could also be refined quite well. And so it's a lot safer and a lot more healthy for the planet, but it's also rare in the universe. So one of the things you run into with this is, if gold is abundant, where would gold be? Well, gold would be abundant inside planets, but you have a problem. If your planet is dying and you want to get gold, you can't just go anywhere for gold. You've got to go to an asteroid belt, which is going to not work because it can blow up, or you got to go to a cold planet, but then it's too cold to do conventional mining, and you can't extract the gold, or you got to go to a hot planet, but the problem is it's in liquid form, you can't even land there. So here they had this perfect planet that they could go to. They could mine gold, it had gold on the surface, and not only was it there, it was in an inhabitable zone, and they didn't have a need or a reason to go inside of the Earth and try to attack a advanced civilization which already resided in Earth.
Well, if I can interject for a second
they could just mine the gold on the outside.
Well, it's interesting, though, because they had mined gold in the Mesopotamia, in that area, the Middle East area, for over 50,000 years, and then they ran out of the gold from those waters, and they decided they were going to go to South Africa and do the mining there, which these 50 astronauts went there, and they had a way station up on Mars where there were 300, they called them a Gigi, that were the transferring point where when they transferred the gold, they transferred it to Mars, and then from there they would get...
No, just over your viewers know, I'm pretty new in the Sumerian tablets, so I'm kind of going to let Steve take over here because,
what was it? Yeah.
Again, this is I'm always ever evolving and changing and understanding my theories, but I haven't been able to research all the Sumerian tablets yet.
Well, I've read...
This is where I'm going to kind of let Steve go into all the rest of this.
Well, so. I've read all 12 books, Chris, so I know a little bit, because I was curious about this, and what got me was that these astronauts came here. You had Alalu came here, who was usurped from Anu, who was then the king. So the former king comes here, finds that there's gold. He calls his planet. 50 astronauts come here, one of them being his son-in-law Enki, and the other is Enlil, the son of Anu. So here it is, they come down here, and Enki was the scientist. He comes down, and he, after a rebellion with the Anunnaki, who were mining now in South Africa, they didn't want to do the work anymore. So Enki decided, because they had Cro-Magnon man, they had the apes that were in Africa, they had 3 or 4 feet high, and he noticed that he was trying to trap the cave people there, but every time he set a trap, one of the Cro-Magnons would undo the trap, so he couldn't trap one of these creatures. So he found it interesting that they were trying to save one another from him capturing one. So finally he captured one, and he realized with Nigasag, his top medical officer, that the chromosomes between the Earth species and the Anunnaki were quite similar, and that if he modified 1 or 2 of the genes with their genes, they could create a hybrid who then could be the slave.
A weaker hybrid. People need to understand that too, that humans are, again, they're not natural of this world. If we were natural, we would have an ape-like strength, and we would have hair all over us. But we were crossbred, and these genes that they use, I believe that they use some of it from pigs and apes.
Well, initially,
some of the research that I've ran into is that's why it's unclean to eat pork. It's not because it's unclean to the Bible. It's because that we are related to pork.
Well, initially they did a lot of different experiments, but when they finally created this man or woman in the image of the Anunnaki, they took over the slave and the mining in Africa. So the first man on this planet, woman, were ape-like. They were black, and they were used specifically for the mining in South Africa. And then there came a point where the brother Enlil, who's up in Mesopotamia area, says, the Anunnaki astronauts are complaining that, the work is too hard up in this part of the world. Bring us some of those black slaves that you created. So they went and brought them up to the Eden, which is Eden, and they brought Adam and Eve there, and they were slaves to all these Anunnakis there. And finally, they did another experiment where they started to multiply them, mass multiply them, and came to the point where once they taught them to copulate, they threw them out of the Eden, because now they then could take care of themselves, because once they were able to copulate.
Now, when you say they drew them out of the Eden, would you speculate? I'm just hearing this for the first time. We know from the Smoky God and Olaf Jansen that Eden was inside of the earth. Could it be that they drew in a war, maybe? They drew in a war. They teased some of those people from inner earth to outer earth, and maybe that's why they're so reluctant to have anything to do with anything from the outer earth, because maybe they created a war at that time.
Well, they did create a war. It was
the
interesting.
Bible talks about Noah's flood, and there being giants in the earth in those days and after, and there is the records of this flood more than the Bible. And if they went in and they destroyed the fountains inside, they were able to get in there and do an attack, causing all the waters to flood to the outside.
Well, what I like to say,
very well could have not only washed more gold out, this would have drew them out to attack back. It's just throwing out there. I don't know if that's true or not.
I will tell you.
We weren't there, but just an idea.
I will tell you that the war between Anu, and then the sons and grandsons and great-grandsons had gone on this planet for over 100,000 years. And Enlil, who was to be the king after Anu crossed, was not the oldest born, but Enki was the first son of Anu, but because his mother was not his wife as the firstborn, but though he was promised to be king. Yeah, the concubine. So what happened was they had crazy laws on this planet Nibiru where Enki got screwed, so to speak, and Enlil got the kingship, and it spewed to their sons and grandsons, causing even the nuclear destruction that happened in the Sinai Desert shows it, where they had a nuclear war here. But Enlil decided that he didn't want Enki's experiment with the humans, because Enki copulated. He created the test tube humans. He had sex with humans over and over and over again. And Enlil, his brother, was mad that he gave the human almost all Anunnaki traits except for a few. And it came to the point he was so pissed off with Enki that he created the flood inside the earth to let the water out, to flood the earth. And when Enki was told by his brother Enlil and Anu from the planet what was going to happen.
So people understand how that can happen. There's great fountains inside of the earth in the city of Eden and elsewhere. So he would have went in and shot those fountains, thus blocking them. And when he blocked them, what would happen was all the rivers from inside the earth would still exit the poles, and this would cause a overheating of the inner sun, causing almost like an explosion of gas and steam coming out of the inside of the earth, thus making mass rain clouds and all of this water would be now on the outside of the earth, and it wouldn't have anywhere to drain through because all of these fountains inside the earth were blocked. Twice the amount of water on the surface that you normally would have. People can visualize that.
Well, to let people know, what I'm talking about, for people who want to get up to speed, read the 12th Planet of Zechariah Sitchin. Sitchin has a number of books. The Lost Book of Enki, which talks about who the father of Earth was, Enki, who was the Lord of the Earth.
I want to touch on that really quick, too. Immediately when you start looking into this, if you're publicly looking into it and you start to talk to people about it, you're going to run into deceptor people who are immediately, like I posted about the Sumerian tablets, and I had 2 or 3 people post against them saying that he's been, ostracized, or he's been debunked. you have to realize that when people go to debunk things, they debunk things to disillusion the people, and people are more apt to believe the lie if the lie is debunking somebody rather than to believe the truth.
Well,
And so,
usually
so these people that debunk him are always like, come buy my CD, come on, it's at the back table. And I'm not really an expert, but I'm debunking him. And it's like, hello, you're just saying that so you can make a few bucks. And that's, I want people to know that people like me and Steven, we're out here, we're doing this for free. We're doing this for the betterment of humanity.
Well, I've studied a number of years, a number of different topics, but Zecharia Sitchin makes the best case for, I won't call it argument, makes the best case for ancient man, civilization, how we got here, who's been manipulating us for thousands of years, and how it is continuing. And when you understand where you've been, then you know
where you can go.
Where you can go, and that I was telling someone the other day, I says, if you really want to talk to God, you don't need to go into a temple, a church, or a praying institution, and it's like you don't need a broker or a lawyer to talk to God. You just go to the source. But because man is involved, man has screwed up just about everything he's ever tried. And I hate to say that, but when you have the seven vanities, ego, jealousy, deceit, and I go on and on what they are, but if you cannot conquer, that the materialism side of you, then you're not going to ascend. How do you love your brother if you have disdain for him and you're talking out of the side of your mouth, or a character assassination? You came here to experience, there's only two things we come here to experience. That's love and joy. And once you get those,
and that gets down to the purpose of life versus the reason that we were created. The people that created us to be slave miners. And some of us, I believe, came from inside of the earth. And I'm not racist at all. I'm not. But I had this idea that some of us, maybe the white people in the north with the blue eyes, and unless the Sumerian tablets talked about a different race that was created, I believe some of us were sent out here, and we don't know it yet. But some of us were sent out here because we were from the inside of the earth, and we're supposed to infiltrate the forces of humanity out here, and we're supposed to make the world better. And I believe that, as crazy as Hitler was, he thought that by wiping out all of the other races that were unclean and were made impure by the Anunnaki, and whatever he decided, that he would somehow make the world a better place, and that he would be at one with the people inside the earth, and the world could be at peace.
Well,
I believe that's totally crazy. I mean, everybody's a human here on this planet.
Well, when you look at Hitler,
on the surface, and we all need to work together. It doesn't matter the race, the creed, the color of your skin. And so I'm not supporting him in any way, but I'm trying to help people understand the craziness of what he did.
Well, when you look at what he did, and you understand that Enlil was Yahweh. Enlil was Enki's brother, who was Yahweh, who came to Moses. And what Enlil did, he created this Jewish belief, and they got all the Jews to circumcise themselves. Not because of cleanliness, so that he could identify who were the Enlilites, who were worshiping his Anunnaki god deity, him. How dare someone come down here who's an astronaut, mess with the people's minds, and turn them into spiritual slaves, so to speak? So the Jews obey this Enlil by circumcising themselves and following the way, so to speak, and were rewarded as such. So Hitler, knowing about the Anunnaki, knowing about the Jews, the chosen people, wanted to eliminate, in my view, these people from getting all the gold, the ginger, everything nice, sugar and spice, because they had been rewarded since the time of their arrival on this planet.